Hello guys and welcome back to another faction unit guide for the Lord of the Rings Total War mod for Rome Remastered. Today we'll be going over the Silvan Elves faction, and just very quickly before I go over it, I just wanted to say thank you all who have chosen to support the channel and subscribe. Since my last top 5 video where I talked about the channel and supporting it, it's been really great to see you all taking the chance and just being able to support me. Thank you all. It's very greatly appreciated, and I just hope it continues, and that you guys stick around and keep enjoying the content, because really that's what I'm wanting, to kind of use this subscriber numbers to learn, as if you guys are actually enjoying my content. You can leave likes, you can comment, obviously, but the more people that we get here to the channel, the more I want to make, Lord of the Rings content for you, Warhammer 3 content when I have access to Immortal Empires in a little over a week. It just kind of helps me, gauge if I'm actually making content that you guys enjoy. So again, thank you those who have taken the plunge and subscribed to the channel. And without further ado, let's just jump into the video. So I don't really have any high or low tier infantry. It's just kind of infantry, and then we have our missile units, our general's bodyguard, our cavalry units, and then artillery. So just jumping into our first unit here is the Silvan swords. If I go over each unit here, you'll look at the morale. All of the units have really great morale. So right from the get-go, you just know the enemy or your units are going to hold the line and fight for a really long time because they just won't break. But really, the first two units here, I've actually had to make this video twice because I recorded it the first time, and my microphone wasn't working, or I didn't have it enabled. So I made a video without any audio. But in both of these units here, the spears and the swords, they're really good at holding the line for your armies. There's really just a few differences with the Silvan swords. Obviously, they got good morale, good melee defense, defensive skill. They do have a shield, so they're pretty good against defending themselves against missile units. Just need to be on the lookout for armor-piercing missiles, but just really good of holding the line against basic infantry. You can't do a shield wall with them, which would have been cool, but all in all, these guys are really good at doing what they need to do, and which is hold the line. And then likewise with the Silvan spears, they don't have a shield, so you do need to be on the lookout for missile units a little more with these guys because they don't have a way to protect themselves. But this is your anti-large, your anti-troll, anything big, really. So depending on what you're going up against, you may need a little bit of both in your armies. However, these guys can hold the line against infantry as well. I've done a little bit of both where, depending who I was going up against, I went with the Silvan swords because they just have that shield. Because the AI, with the elves, I tend to missile spam a little more in my armies and just have a few units of infantry. The AI doesn't really seem to do that. They usually just, do a bunch of melee with a little bit of missile units. So it's not that you need to have a 1-to-1 match, 8 units of infantry for 8 units of theirs, because what the AI will tend to do is if my unit of Silvan spears here and then the enemy has this unit of swords and this other infantry unit here, and they're both trying to just attack, the AI for the most part doesn't do a really good job on flanking, and so they'll just throw both of these units into my one unit. And so you don't need to match. Basically, you just don't need to match. Okay, if they have 10 infantry troops, then I need 10 infantry. What you want in your armies are damage dealers and units that can hold the line. And these two units here, they are not your damage dealers. They are holding your line units, which, don't get me wrong, they're really good at doing it, especially for light tier infantry, which the Silvan swords are considered light infantry, and the spears are. I know it doesn't say it, but trust me, they definitely are light infantry. And so with that, they really do a good job. Which, in terms of holding the line, what you need other than that, there's a flanking unit, which is your woodland wardens. They have 2 hit points. They're effective against armor, so they have armor piercing damage, a really high charge, really high defensive skill, and good melee attack. These guys are going to be really good at getting around. Once these guys have some enemy units thrown up into them, they're really good at flanking and doing a bunch of damage. Just really be on the lookout for missile units, whether they're just being shot, straight into the face or to the sides or into the back of them. Be on the lookout for that, because they basically have no way of defending themselves. They basically have no shield. Having a 2 shield in the game basically means they don't have a shield at all. And obviously they have 2 swords and aren't even carrying one. They do have a very little bit amount of armor, so I mean basic, even though they do have 2 hit points, any sort of missile unit is just going to tear these guys to pieces. So definitely make sure that the enemy missile units are taken care of, either entirely or to the point where it's just not going to matter anymore, because these guys will take quite a bit of damage from them. But moving on to your damage dealers, and really, in my opinion, the quote unquote fun units of your army. Both of these units will be used in any army you make, or I would imagine anyway. I mean, you're playing as an elven faction, so I mean the elves probably they really focus on their missile units. Great missile attack, great range, good amount of ammo. Just like any missile unit, though, try and keep them out of melee, unless it's like dire, you've run out of all of your infantry, because if any entities die, that is less entities for your next fight that are able to use ammunition, because ammunition replenishes every battle and not necessarily entities. And so every battle, even if all of your infantry is at like 20% health, as long as your missile units have all their health and all their entities, that's fine. Because in sieges, if you've watched my Lothlorien campaign, I use archers to do a lot of the sieges anyway, and you don't really have to fight a lot of the time anyway, until towards the end when you run out of ammo. But these guys are just, there's really not too much of a difference between them. The Mirkwood Rangers just have a little more defensive or melee prowess, but again, that's not a necessity. They do have a little bit less ammo, but they also have more entities in their unit card. So really good units. Even though the Elven Archers are your tier 1, you're going to get them right away. You can definitely use them throughout the entirety of your campaign. And then once you want to upgrade to Mirkwood Rangers, you definitely can. They're just going to be a little bit better than your Elven Archers. And so moving on to the third group I have here, these are just going to be your Bodyguard units. They are Emerald units, like the Greenwood Sentinels or the Emerald Guard, which, as you can tell, the details are fairly similar. The Emerald Guard are just going to be, I mean, it's pretty cool if you look at their sword here. It's got like an emerald lining to it, so really well done for the modding team on that. But if we look, they both have 3 hit points. Morale is 40. Your Emerald Guards are just, I mean, these are dwarf type numbers. They're just really strong troops. These are what you're going to see with the majority of your Bodyguard units. I believe Legolas is the only one that has the Greenwood Sentinels, which is just I mean, they only have 48 entities, but I mean, if you look at the stats, that kind of explains why. 20 missile attack for their, no experience unit, 20 missile attack. So, they get up to 9. That's almost 29, almost 30 missile attack, which is just outrageous. Really good melee defense for a missile unit. These guys, I mean, if you obviously won't have a bunch of these in your armies, but I mean, if you're in a tight pinch and you need something to kind of turn the tides, your Emerald Guard will probably be the one to do it. These guys are amazing. Just really, really strong unit. And then same with, even though they only have 48 entities, basically every missile unit or missile that they fire, they're going to get a kill. So even though they only have 48 entities, they're going to get a good amount of kills just with their missile units or missile ammunition in general. And then lastly, just your 2 units of Cav. For the Silvan Elves, having a lot of kind of light infantry, a lot of their roster is based around light infantry. Really strong units. Their missile unit is really good at kind of what I've talked about with the Dale faction. If you watch the Dale unit guide, if I just pause it here, or start the battle and pause it just so I can use shift to show you. They're really good at like going around the sides of enemy armies and like shooting into the back, drawing some enemy units away from the actual fight that's happening. And they're just really good at running down enemy units once they've ran out of ammunition. But I do like to keep a few of them in the armies, especially on bigger scale battles. You know, if it's like 20 versus 20, I definitely want to have a unit or two of these scout cav units just to, you know, take some, you know, if it's Mordor, you know, I'm going up against and they have trolls, it's just really good to have them because sometimes you can get the troll unit to just chase these guys. And so you may not necessarily kill the troll unit, but you're going to, you know, soften them up. You'll see blood start showing up on them. And that way when they get, you know, to the other units in your army, they're a little damaged. They're not going to be as strong. They're not going to be as effective. And they're just going to die quicker. So really good at just harassing the enemy. And then your melee variant, just got to be careful because they don't have a shield and they don't have a spear. So if we look at their stats, their charge is only 2, which for a cavalry unit, that's not the greatest. They're obviously light in terms of light or heavy or shock. But other than that, just keep them out of missile fire. They're really good, you know, at, you know, if the enemy's over here at the melee, really good at like getting behind, getting rid of the enemy missile units or charging into the back of the enemy, and just make sure you keep cycle charging with them because both of these units are fairly squishy. They have really good value in your armies, but they are fairly squishy, meaning once they start taking damage, they take damage very quickly and they will die very quickly. But they are useful in your armies. You just got to be a little more micro intensive with them just to make sure they don't end up dying. And then lastly, it's just your basic artillery. Again, I don't recommend having them in your armies because siege towers and battering rams do far much better than the artillery pieces. Plus, the artillery pieces will slow you down on the campaign map, which is obviously not a good thing. But you know, if you want to bring them, you're more than able to. At least the Elven Siege Bow is the only one you get. You don't actually get a catapult with these Silvan Elves, but you do. They are anti-infantry and not necessarily for sieges. But if you want them, great. I just at this point in patch 1, I can't recommend using them. And then also not featured are like the Artillery Miners and the Mithlin Sentinels, just because I feel like a lot of your campaigns you're not going to have a lot of those units. It's really just going to be the units I've talked about here, which is the bulk of your units that you will be using as the Silvan Elf faction. And with that, that is the end of the video. So don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys have not already. And again, thank you all for the last week. For those of you who have really taken the chance and started to support the channel by subscribing to it, really appreciate all of you who have chosen to do that. And even if you haven't, I appreciate you guys coming to check out the videos and just watching the videos. I do hope you are enjoying the content because I mean, I'm using you guys as feedback to whether or not I need to change things or if I need to keep doing what I'm doing. And so I greatly appreciate all the subscriptions and the views, in general. So with that being said, you know, just thank you again, and stay tuned for the Silvan Elf faction guide that will be coming out shortly after this video. And until then, I will see you guys later on. Have a good one.